all, Randi here, and welcome to the Stargate activation challenges and issues that we are going to have coming from that direction. I've just been waiting on that to happen, and yesterday on December 28th, there was a planetary alignment that has not been seen for 18 years, where the planets around the sun were standing in their correct position, so to speak. So that was an alignment and all visible on the sky. Predominantly the five inner planets such as Venus and Mercury and Earth and Mars and Saturn, I think it was, something like that. You can look it up because it's not that important in kind of which planets are we talking about. What is important here is the solar gates and the Trinity gates, because that's where we are now heading with the outer domain reconfiguration. And I suggest you listen, for those of you who haven't done the basics on the sun course, they are on December 25th, 6th, 7th, can't remember because I'm not going up into dates. We had the implementation of the perihelion technologies that are now changing the outer domain completely into a new type of configuration. And this activation of the Trinity gates are to be seen in that context. So what is going on? I'll try to explain this. Some of you are familiar with these names because you have bumped across them during the stellar activation cycle, and the ones that we're talking about the stellar activation cycle, such as the different promoters out there from America. I'm not going to mention any names. You can look up Trinity gates, solar gates, and then you will get that version of it. But here I'm going to give my version of the information I get and the information that's been fed into me. And this is not a kind of a recall moment where I read it years ago and then is now just being activated. No, because this is different. So what was done with these gates during the stellar activation cycle were linked up to some of the constellations. But now, because the perihelion, peri means around, helion means sun, the technologies that are now being implemented around the sun that are creating triangulation between the planetary cores, the sun, and our planet. So that's the way we're going to look at the Trinity gates, because normally the Trinity gates were used as a kind of exit point in the outer domain for the ones on the lower levels of the third cycle, so to speak, which is often referred to as the 3D or the third dimension, which is inaccurate. But we're talking density 1 outer domain, where we have three different types of radiation vibration fields that goes with holographic units that are a composition of third cycle energies and fourth cycle energies. And that is often referred to as the third and the fourth dimension, which is also inaccurate, but we will go along with it just as long as we remember that we have the outer domain, the middle domain, the inner domain, the core domain. The outer domain is what we often refer to as terrestrial. Middle domain is often what we refer to as stellar. That is also incorrect. It is systemic. It means that the reality field goes into what we could call density 2 type of energies, where the vibrational fields operate in a different way, where light codes becomes more prominent and sound fields becomes less prominent. So that's where the sound fields, the vibrational field of the third cycle changes into light code fields, so that in the middle domain you have the radiation fields and you have the vibrational fields, which are then both operating what we call light codes of the original configuration under the ancient ones. Whereas in the outer domain, where we have the third cycle, that's the sound fields, that's the third cycle type of energy of the previous universal structure, and we have the fourth cycle, or the vibrational field compared or connected to this universal structure as part of the fourth cycle, which were the idea with the entire construction under the LPU, that the third cycle races would be able to upgrade via the restoration program, via the LPU, into the current low point of the fourth cycle, from where they would continue the elevation processes in the outer domain into the fifth cycle, which from where they would then transfer to the middle domain, fourth cycle, middle domain, fifth cycle, middle domain, sixth cycle under the density 2. And the sun was the main provider of the energies for that transition process to be able to happen. Then we had the timeline event, we had the hijacking, we had all of that kind of stuff. So now we are, because the sun has shut down, as you know from the sun basic course, the sun is now a density 1 sun. And that means that our reality field is now being recalibrated into density 1 configuration. And so are we. And that has nothing to do with the third dimension. This has all to do with the original cycles of progression, the original cycles of consciousness, and the original dynamics and laws under the different domains from where we can resume our more or less original configuration, perhaps not physically expressed as we would like due to the enclosure and the way that things are being prohibited still. But there will be those of us who are part of the pilot projects and those of us who are part of the test projects for the future humanities. We will begin a recalibration process as of today. So what happens here now on yesterday 27th, today 28th, with the alignment of the planets around the sun, where they then connect to the what we call triangulation dynamics between the sun and the planetary cores and into our core of the planet. That means that first we had the first triangulation between Mars, the Sun, and our fourth cycle nodal point, which is the temple of Hatshepsut, or whatever she's called. Sorry about that one of the ancient queens of Egypt, which is an interesting. You should look Hatshepsut, whatever, up again. One of these ancient queens, and she and a whole flock were some of the first ones of the reseeding of the fourth cycle humans into what we call the current cycle under the Dracos. But that was on top of the original fourth cycle temple structure that are beneath and are in what we call the original fourth cycle energies before the timeline event. It was made dormant. So that has been activated with the activation sequences of Mars. Again, we have the other races that are trying to hijack that opportunity and turn it into the POMs are running their counter sequences on that as well, which I talk about the perihelion technologies. But at the same time, we are having incoming from the future that are also running counter energies on that one. So that's why we are having this little bit of wobbling back and forth between the POM races that are trying to get access of that original fourth cycle gate system, linking it to Mars and linking it to their parallel universal matrix. And at the same time, we're having operating incoming energies from the Andromeda lineages and the future humans that are now doing the same thing, but from the Andromeda system, and are then pinging the Trinigates to override what the POMs are doing and pushing them back. And at the same time, shutting down the third cycle gate, shutting down the Serpent gate completely and utterly, and make sure that it will never ever reactivate. And that's the whole idea with activating the Trinigates, or the Trinity gates. So the Trinity gates will then begin to calibrate now with a high hypersonic sound frequency that I can hear. It's not visible. It's not going to be a sound you can hear out there, but I can hear it, and its tone. It is so it is both deep, but it's also high. So this is not a sound vibrational field that we know of, but it runs from the third cycle into the fourth and back to the third and into the fourth, back and forth, like this kind of back, forth, pinging high, low, high, low, high, low. And it makes me nauseous, and really, because it activates the flame probabilities of the proton, neutrons, and electrons that are part of our molecular structure. That's the base point of our human DNA. So that is now running. At the same time, we're having the time wave continuum counter forces that are trying to activate the 2004 timeline with the alignment of the planets, which happened 18 years ago in 2004. And they initiate the Alpha Omega programs from the beginning to the end of our solar system programs, which means in 1999. Program. So this is not the Doomsday programs. The Doomsday programs are the Book of Revelation that was initiated in 2001. But here we are having 2004 timelines where the who are running the Alpha Omega programs are under what we call the future humans, enhanced humans, in their newer versions that are now coming in because they have connected from the future and into our reality using the quantum bridges that are now being established via the Hadron Colliders, the collider technology. So we are here, and that means not just CERN, it means all colliders around the planet. So they're creating their counter field, and now the Aurora time continuum from the Andromeda system are now creating the Trinity Gate counter for that one. So we are in a very, very funny in-between state right now here. In the fifth cycle. Those who are in the fourth cycle will not hear this. They will not feel this because it will only affect the fifth cycle. So that means we must upgrade our human DNA to be able to work in the fifth cycle, but the original fifth cycle of the outer domain. And that's where the Andromeda forces come in, or the future Andromeda humans that has been called many funny things. And I don't really know why they call it the Aurora, other than it kinds of that, the energy vibration they have. You look at them, they look a little bit Aurora-like, so to speak, whatever that means. It's not something I pay much attention to, whatever's been called. What's important here is that it's all technology, it's all future technology. So what is happening now from the core of the Andromeda system is now via the Trinity structures, the Trinity gates and the solar gates. So we're having two levels here. We have another triangulation between the Andromeda core and the solar core and our planetary core. So that's the large triangulation that's happening. And that is now running its sequences in. So that is now overriding the Mars, Sun, and Earth configuration that was tried to be hijacked by the POM races, and now recalibrating that into the original fourth cycle energies under the ancient ones. And then it will then run into the other planets. It will run into Mercury, run into Venus, it will run into Saturn, it will run into Jupiter. Uranus and Neptune will not be affected because they belong to another scheme, so they're not part of ours. And with that, once that triangulation has happened around the sun, then the sun will be connected to all of the planetary cores, but linked up to the Andromeda galaxy and the original future human configurations of the humans that left our solar system shortly after the timeline event and recuperated in the Andromeda system, which I talk about in the HAL Philosophy book. I don't say it's the Andromeda system there, but it is the sixth cycle humans that were already in process of prospering under the early versions of the LPU and the Pillar Project took off. I remember that one when I sent them off because I couldn't go with them since I already had begun to show signs of dysfunctional DNA, so to speak. Genetics were already beginning to show signs of dark codes. So I couldn't join. So with that one, then once all of the planets, that's happening right now around the sun, then the sun will be amped up and realigned as the 12 Sisters network that connects to the Andromeda system with that as the main hub. And then it will ping into all of the other suns of the outer domain. And that's that joint group of future humans that I refer to when I talk about for a better future. We have the Novus Ordo Futuri, which are part of the enhanced human under the military projects and some of the other groups that are there. And then we have the original future human civilizations of the fifth cycle that I'm trying to get up and running. So that's the energies that are coming in there. So we're then having that reconfiguration. So that means we are having different things that are now happening. We are having people that are under the enhanced human future military project humans, whatever that is, under the outskirts of the Andromedan system, where they have been allowed a pocket reality, that are now also working together with the original true humans that left for the Andromeda system and have recentered themselves in the future in the Andromeda system, year 3150 so far. The enhanced humans are in the 1999 position in the outskirts of the Andromeda system. They're not allowed into the core fields or the inner domain fields or the middle domain fields of the Andromeda system. They are in the outer domain fields, but they're collaborating as things are now to push back the POM and the transhuman agenda, as well as closing the door to the dark forces, because we are a little bit fed up with all of that dark snake things that have happened since 2016, where everything kind of rose up under the 2001 Book of Revelation timeline that was meant for all of the underworld forces to rise up, possess humans, and create the false prophet and all of that, leading to the great wars between what was and what is and what could come, and by that being taken over by some of the old Atlantean whatever groups that kind of felt they were not seen and heard in the reseeding, because that's been all of their projects were shut down. And we've seen how they've been trying to ignite all of these stupid chimera projects projects, stupid radiation projects, stupid sound wave projects, stupid frequency wave projects, stupid whatever they were doing using humanoid genetics from some of the parallel systems, and using genetics from all crafts and all types of entities and all types of races and all sorts of shit work that has no play inside our reality field, calling it regenesis program for the Neo-Atlantean civilizations in the new capital, with America as the main predominantly world-ruling secret government and later exterior government under the collaboration with different forms of alien factions under the negative alien agenda, to use that expression as well. So with that one said, then we are in a big mix. So for those of us who are doing the original True Human D14 collective progressive transformative energy system under the original LPU project, pillar project, going into the ancient one, fifth cycle configuration of the outer domain, we are then being affected by the Trinity gates in a different way, because as I said, it ignites via the Andromedan energies. It begins to ignite the core features of our DNA, building in what we call the fourth strand into the male genome. The Y chromosome is now being recalibrated for those who have a receding fourth cycle X chromosome, not the ones that are under the insectoid or the insectoid avian or the insectoid reptoid races. They have a different type of X chromosome configuration that's dormant. They have a predominant Y configuration that's connected to the snake. They will be affected by the calibration of the sound fields that will dismantle their connection to the snake and the snake gate, and by that it can be pushed back and closed off, and they will then go dormant and they will become part of the deteriorating fourth cycle, and most of them will then be merged with and taken over by the POM races and become part of their transhuman agenda. So that's the deroute for these kind of males, which of course is sad, but it is what it is. They were engineered to take out this planet, engineered to seed the dark forces, engineered to rise up the underworld forces, and engineered to suppress all types of receding fourth cycle energies under the Pleiadian races, under the D14 collective, under the original True Human agenda and policies and developmental programs. So they are antagonistic in all their ways. They look human, they talk humans, but they are predators and they are seeded to take us out. And it's as simple as that. So they will be recalibrated. The snake gate will be shut down. And then the dragon, not the dragon, but the dragon gate, the original Niburian gate of D10, will then begin to activate in its new configuration. The eagle has been restored, will begin to reconfigure as well, using the same sound fields, but now with the fourth cycle after the reseeding, putting that one in, recalibrating the male genome into being able to build that extra strand to the Y chromosome, so it becomes a reseeding fourth chromosomal feature, but then with the adding in from the sound fields that are now being pinged from the Andromeda system, putting in what we call a new feature that is a fifth cycle type of genomic structure for the males inside our planet, under the ones that have the avian mammal configuration and the mammal humanoid configuration and the mammal human configuration. They will be affected by this. So that's the upgrading of the male population that will then be able to complete their fourth cycle work, which will then be part of the triangulation between Mars and males and the other planets, but that will predominantly be then that will affect the males on the reseeding level. For now, later on, they will be recalibrated into other variations, beginning to ping with what we call the planetary Trinity gates and the solar gates of the original solar system humans under the D9 collective of the Andromeda future and 3150. So that's a completely different male genomic structure that has not been seen in our system so far. So what are the dynamics between the activation of the Trinity gates? So first, the sun will ping to all of the inner planets. They will then recalibrate, linking up to the Andromedan core under the Aurora time continuum. That is from the far, far future. They will push in energies that will then spark to life combinations between, we could call intrinsic fields between the inner planets and the sun, which will then ignite the 12 Sisters network within these planetary cores, led by the Andromedan main sister network that is there that will affect our sun, changing the configuration of our sun to an outer domain under the ancient one configuration, which will then begin to pump in energies into our planetary system and all of the other planets in the inner levels of the solar system, counter the POM races, try to annex the solar system and attach it to their artificial hollow matrices. Now it will be then connected to the Andromedan system instead. It will be upheld by that for 2000 years, which means that the future humans of the 1999 timeline that began in 2004, that's the Alpha Omega program, will now begin to use the time wave continuum to begin to send back some of their new understandings of what they need to address in their previous types of military projects and their previous type of Majestic 12 projects, MK Ultra projects, all sorts of covert military projects, where they try to upgrade humanity. So that will now be possible because they have now realized that most of these projects were under the Dark Ones and the Neo-Atlantean agenda, and they have let go of that one and are willing to upgrade whatever they need to upgrade because they now understand that unless they really do some big difference with their projects here in the past, then there will be no future humanity and it will all have been for naught. Whatever they try to accomplish will not ever come into fruition and they will cease to exist in the future. So that's why it's called the Alpha Omega programs. So with that one said, then we have the whole triangulation between the inner planets and the sun that will then upgrade and begin to create these intrinsic fields of energy currents that will begin to spin. And as they spin, they activate the Trinity gates in our planet, on the different nodal points that are connected to the four phases of man, plasma crystal network. And what has happened right now is that at each and one of the four corners of the four phases of man, the ones that were actually activated in 2004 was led to the tsunami in Thailand. And that has risen up. It has been standing dormant since 2004 because it was pushed into the 2001 timeline due to all of the changes that happened in the 2001 timeline that led to the current situation that we are in now. The Book of Revelation, doomsday predictions. But here we're reverting back into that 2004 timeline because it has been standing dormant. So it has a high viability rate for us to upgrade our human DNA and do what we need to do. Those who have the right configuration of the first, second, and third seeding after the fall of Atlantis, we will be affected by this and begin our upgrading sequences following the activation of the four phases of man, planetary networks that were under what is called the Guardian Alliances. But I don't go along with the Guardian Alliances. For me, that's mainly technologies centered in some kind of fifth cycle headquarter, previously located on Hawaii, but that has fallen apart because these Guardian Alliances no longer exist. They have shifted out and transformed into other future races in the Andromeda system, which we know that this is what happens outside our little enclosure. We're stuck in the past where everybody else is elevating and changing and coming back and traveling and doing whatever they need to do. So with the reconfiguration of our sun and the planetary cores and reconnecting and being infused with energies from the Andromeda system to push out the POMs and to shut down the Dark Ones and to close off the Serpent Gate, the Trinity gates will then begin to recalibrate with the original solar gates that are the connection points between the inner planets and our planet. And that they will then be infused so that the Trinity gates will no longer just be exit gates, but will also be influx gates of energy. You can't enter via these gates, but you can exit via these gates, but you can't enter via these gates, but they will begin to pump in what we call 12 Sisters Network energies that will recalibrate the sound fields of the third cycle on our planet, affect the molecular structure of all males, recalibrate their Y chromosome into a new configuration from where they can lift into the fourth cycle, the ones that have the mammal avian, the mammal humanoid, the mammal true human composition that were part of the first reseeding after the fall of Atlantis and the second reseeding after the fall of Atlantis. The third reseeding were under the new Atlantean races, and that one is going to be recalibrated, and either they shift and change or they will be pushed into the POM matrix where they actually more accurately probably belong. As the Trinity gates pump up more energy, the 4 points, the 4 original north, south, east, and west that are the originally oriented towards the four phases of man, planetary plasma information network, energy network, whatever, light code network, however you want to put it. It's called the APIN, which is inaccurate, but we'll just go along with that one because these are built upon plasma crystals. They will begin to ignite the core energies into the surface, which will then recalibrate the surface of our planet, aligning it with the original outer domain density energies, which will then begin to create different types of sound fields, different types, that's vibrational fields, but now in a fourth cycle configuration, it will alter the radiation fields, but now into a fifth cycle configuration. And then the holographic network itself will begin to align itself with the middle domain, same level, fifth cycle as it was originally intended. So that will means that eventually in the future, the Trinity gates will then become fifth cycle exit gates from where people will be able to travel back and forth to the Andromeda system. So that's the plan with that one, but that's in the future. That's long after we have ever decided to leave this reality field. As the four phases of man, original north, east, south, and west gate system of the Trinity gates begins to ignite and activate their sequences, these sound waves will go back and forth, and they will eventually go back and forth Andromeda and our system using the Trinity gates to do so. And as the vibrational field of our planetary construction, the core domain construction, amplifies into having the original fourth cycle configuration of the vibrational fields, then the sound fields will begin to change into light code fields, which will then alter the fourth cycle altogether. And that means that then the inner domain and the middle domain will begin to reconfigure as well in our planetary or solar system configuration, which will then begin to pumping energies via the Trinity gates into our planetary outer domain, recreating what we call the solar gates, which are what we call sister gates to the Trinity gates in the fourth and the fifth dimension of the outer domain, not the fourth and the fifth dimension of the middle domain. For that, you have to have a density 2 configuration to use the gates in that manner, because you can use the gates differently all depending on your configuration. So right now, the focus is on the outer domain density 1 energies to allow the current type of humanity to begin the upgrading processes and reconfiguration to the outer domain density 1, 12 sisters, Andromeda, solar system, interconnected time wave continuum, but here called the aurora time continuum and not the time wave continuum under the POM races. So that's kind of where we have the difference. Probably it would be more accurate to call the aurora code wave features or something else, whatever that is. The aurora goes with that. It's not time, it's light codes and sound codes that are coming in. So that's why they call it that. Just got that explanation. So this means that we are now officially beginning the reconfiguration of the molecular state of those of us who are part of the first and the second reseeding after the fall of Atlantis under the mammal, humanoid, mammal avian, and mammal true human races that participated in an attempt to get us all back under the D14 collective, under the D12, and of course also at that point in time D11, which then shifted later on, and then the D10 collectives, but the D10 went with the Orion agenda, the D11 later on went with the Orion agenda. So that's the D11 is the Nibiruan gate systems, and the D10 is the dragon, not the dragon, but the original dragon races that were humans, and they shifted as they regressed into becoming what we call more reptoid. They shifted to the Orion system, and with that, then the D9 collective, the Andromeda system, came in and took the place of the D10 as an attempt to recalibrate the D11, which didn't succeed, and that led to the downfall of what we call the white Syrian elder strand, and then changed the D11 Vega configurations under the D13 onto the negative alien agenda due to the flaw in their original genetics. And with that, shut down the D12 collective as they began to take that one over. So this is also an attempt to try and say, okay, we are trying to recreate the Lyran Andromeda lineages that were part of the reseeding after the fall of Atlantis. And that's the highest level, the 6-dimensional level, or the 6 cycle or 6 root race configuration that were reseeded, but never came to prosper after the fall of Atlantis, because the foundation of these lineages had already taken off after the timeline event. And therefore, the attempt to reseed it was again to do what we're doing here, but never succeeded. So these are some of when I talk about the challenges of the Stargates and what that means to us and some of the issues that will bring. That will be part of this course material. As you know, with the challenges of the sun, we're done over a longer period of time. And this course material will stretch over as long as it's needed. I might add in new material later on as I do with the challenge of the sun course material. But here we are now, since the sun is now being aligned to the Stargates, then it's more accurate to see our sun as a Stargate and no longer an energy provider, but as an exit and entry point of Andromedan energies into our system, being the midpoint in that new triangulation that should assure our planetary activation and upgrading into being able to align with the D9 collective as the last stages of the 3-9 activation cycle that we are in, activation and cleanup of the 3-9 pillar, which we are in, so that once we hit the 2025 timeline, we will not be plunged into the activation processes of the 2-8 pillar and the 1-7 pillar, which there's nothing left there that is worth working with because of the 2001 timeline rise up of the underworld energies and the huge sacrifice of 9/11 and what they invited in there. So these timelines that are connected to the 2-8 pillar and the 1-7 pillar are all collapsed, even though there is an attempt to revive some of the 1-7 pillar timelines under the Vega, and these are the ones that are called the Dragon Gates and the Dragon lineages, which is something entirely else, which is part of the Draco collective, and they're resetting into the 1-7 pillar as later on when they took over our planet, creating their hubs in the 1-7 pillar configuration and technologies. They avoided the 2-8 pillar, but the Anana projects under the D13 collective of the D11 Vega races, the Niburians of that branch, which we know as the Anunnaki, she worked with the 2-8 pillar and she demolished whatever was left there and completely shut everything down and created what we understand as the underworld forces in the manner that most of us are experiencing them today, and also created the possibility of procreating inside our reality, the whole sexual energy, connecting it to the snake, and all of these different features that she was operating with and created to show how great a master engineer she was and how great a master geneticist that she was. And she was trying to fill out the shoes of the projects of the other Niburians that have been here and done their greater projects. Anyways, I'm not going to go further into that one. Point being is that we are to do the shift in 2025 as the 2025 forerunners, and we have now got 2 years to master the molecular transition with these incoming energies. And we will do that in energy work using the transformative energy system. As the sound waves will alter the minefield of males, it will also recalibrate the female XX configuration, where we will then upgrade our dormant X, the female XX combination, one of the X's are kind of dormant. That's the original fourth cycle before what we call the timeline event. And then we have the X version after the timeline event. And after that's part of the X chromosome fourth cycle reseeding after the fall of Atlantis. And this recalibration will activate the original fourth cycle before the fall of Atlantis and before the timeline event. So that will connect us to the original high level fourth cycle of the outer domain, but not the middle domain configuration, the outer domain configuration as part of the first attempts under the LPU and the original Pillar project to recreate and restore the D13 collective and the third cycle races that were part of the early stages of the Pillar project. So that's how that one's going to go. And as that recalibrates our dormant X chromosome, then that will ignite with what we call the original fourth cycle configuration that will change our light codes, and then that will override the existing fourth cycle configuration we have now that the Draco's tampered with and enable us to breed and all these kind of things. That will change. It will change our light fields, our biofield, our emotional field, and our mental field, and we will then begin the reconfiguration into the fifth cycle. We will go first, and males will follow second. The ones that because they have to reconfigure their Y chromosome, then they have to reconfigure their X chromosome, then they have to ignite these two as a unity, and then as a 4-4 unity, and then they have to disconnect completely from all types of older sound field, vibrational ideologies and ideas, and upgrade into what we call light code features, and then they can begin to activate their later X chromosome into the the pentose chromosome, which is the 5 level, the 5th cycle chromosome, and then the Y chromosome will then become the base of the 4th cycle chromosome, with then changing from sound into light, and then they will have the correct configuration. And that we have to do in more or less 2 years' time to be able to connect to the 5th cycle, remember to be able to connect to the 2025 timeline and dodge the bullet of the activation sequences of the 2.8 pillar and the 1.7 pillar, which is now the 1.7 pillar is connected to the POM races, being overridden by the dragon grids, the dragon energies, the dragon genetics, the dragon Tiamat, whatever configuration, as they are pushing that one in to become part of the 1.7's pillar project activation cycle that will run from 2034 and until 2043, I think it is, something like that. They will probably tamper with time, so the dates are not so important. It's more important to understand what's going on. And that is also why one of the reasons why they are now pushing from the Andromeda galaxy to make sure that that's not going to happen, because we are not going to have these POM android crystalline races walking around in the future that will lead to nothing good whatsoever. So with that quick update, I'm just blasting through there. We will see what the effects will be of it. We will also see, will they succeed? Will there be gate wars? That is definitely a possibility. Will there be a push back and forth? Will they succeed in doing so? But those of us who are part of these test projects, we have been selected today and have been pushed into the 2004 timeline, but under the original Andromeda and 12 Sisters network, where we will then begin to do the reconfiguration. There will be the other ones that will try to get into the 2004 timeline as well, but they will work with their version of the Alpha Omega projects under the 2099 enhanced humans of the future. They will come in there. They will work aligned with the Andromedan collectives of the D9, of the original D9, D6 collectives, but they will try to do their version of it so that they can take over America and then get America to be part of the future human civilizations that will then prosper on this planet when the reseeding of the 6th cycle humans will happen sometimes in the future, so that they will make it there, so they don't have to be exiled in the outskirts of the Andromeda system on a timeline that has a limited date to it, 2099, so they can come back and then join the rest of us, or choose to do something else or align with something else. It's always free, whatever people want to do, right? You can't force them to become true humans if they don't want to. So with that one said, that's the introduction to the challenges of the new reality challenges of the Stargates, which has been kickstarted today. And we will begin our molecular reconstruction processes that will hopefully lead to the DE1 reconfiguration of the HOPE work and the HOPE project. And then we will have, hopefully, as people are activating and reconnecting and becoming more familiar with having access to a higher level of information systems, begin to rebuild a new type of societal structure, new type of governmental structure, which are part of the HOSE Higher Order Systemic Energetic Awareness Project, where we will then resume as the original advanced civilization of our solar system, including new types of technologies, new type of psychology, new types of sciences, new type of food, health, and environment. That's where that one fits in. Types of work with energy and our planet in transformative projects, new types of businesses, which is the whole Changemaker project, and all of these other ends that I'm tying up and putting together into this huge project and new architecture of the future humans under the 12 Sisters network, under the D12, the recalibrated D11, and the now D9, D6 new human civilizations that will be reseeded back into our reality field once all of the noise is gone and we have recalibrated to the configuration under the ancient ones. Why this is possible, I have explained that in the reconfiguration material and the basics on that one. The startup course, I explained why that has suddenly become a possibility, as well as other layers of information I give in here and there. As always, there are much more to be said to whatever I'm putting forth here, but this is the beginning point of something new that has not been here for a while. And with that one, we will continue on the 2004 timeline. That is why we get some of the original other, what we call the Andromeda system, is coming back in. We had a lot of Andromedan influx, both in the Andromedan constellation, but also via the original Calontic Sciences and under the original Guardian Alliances. And then that all shifted in 2012 because the 2001 timeline became too predominant, and they kept pulling in falling angelics, negative alien agenda, Andromeda, not Andromeda, but Orion conglomerate, underworld forces as they run rampant across our planet and took over different civilizations, which means that we're also going to see, with the clearing of the Serpent Gate and the sound wave fields that are connected to the male minefield of the negative alien agenda, they will begin to reconfigure, and that should bring the serpent to peace, that is running around the equatorial line between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn on our planet, the whole mid-equatorial line that is now, it's kind of a dark type of energy that will then be demolished and cease to exist. And then will that hopefully reconfigure the fourth cycle, southern hemisphere, and the fifth cycle, northern hemisphere, so that we can continue as an advanced civilization where we all work together as a planetary civilization, growing out the current type of human form into an outer domain, transformative, functional type of human being that will then become a new type of seed race, but again aligned with the original probabilities and possibilities of the outer domain and the original dynamics of the true solar system civilizations that used to be here under the Ancient Ones in the D14 collective. Thank you.